Okay, so in the case of Sally, 16-year-old comes to your office and shares that she's had suicidal thoughts but has never attempted. First, we would discuss a little bit more. I would ask Sally if she's ever had a plan for suicide. Um, then I would ask her if there's been any big changes in home life at school that may have triggered some of these feelings, or what happens right before she has these kind of feelings. Next, then I would reassure her about dad. And I would tell her, students are almost always concerned that their parents are going to be angry, but that the parents really have their best interest in mind. They just want them to be safe. I would then go on and reassure her that my first responsibility is to her and to her alone, for her safety, for her well-being, and to make sure that she has a plan to be safe when those bad thoughts, those bad feelings come up. I would then go into explaining to her that I have a responsibility to her dad as well, and I do have to talk to him, that she wouldn't have to talk to him yet, but that I would need to phone a friend in to talk to her a little bit more and evaluate the situation a little closer, and that I would need dad's consent to do that. So typically at that time, I would then notify my district mental health counselor, let them know what's going on. We're usually always on the same page. And then we would call in what we call MRT, or mobile response team, because we have an issue of self-harm, or suicide. So then I would have someone sit with Sally while I went out and called dad and got consent. Typically, they usually do give consent. I've only had one situation where they haven't, and then it gets a little more interesting. So we will assume that dad gave consent here. I would reassure him that MRT does the evaluation, that they will contact him if he's not there when they're finished. And then we will go into the steps that MRT goes through. And if he has any other questions, I'll answer those to the best of my ability. So typically when MRT does arrive, they will interview the student. And then based on that interview, they decide if there is a Baker Act that needs to occur, if Sally does end up with intent and or other concerns. If not a Baker Act, then they do a safety plan in which they will check in with Sally and check in with her parents or family for the next 3 days, usually, just to make sure that Sally's in a safe place and she's using coping skills and everything as well. Sometimes there's not even a safety plan and they just counsel with the student, and then they inform the counselor of what's going on, and then we move on from there. So the ethical and legal considerations in this case fall under the ASCA ethical standards for school counselors: serious and foreseeable harm to self and others. So Sally is having those suicidal ideations, and we want to move past that. So we want to put in risk assessment there using our MRT group to come in and just kind of be that extra reassurance on where she's at and what help she may need. Of course, we have the legal responsibility to break that confidentiality between me and Sally and bring her dad in and up to date on what's going on, because again, we have the issue of those suicidal thoughts. That moves us into the ACA Code of Ethics, which also falls under serious and foreseeable harm, and then those legal requirements to let MRT know, let dad know, and breach that confidentiality with the student there just for their best interest.